Johnny Carson had been the host of more than 4,000 episodes. He had seen guests cry, admit it, leave the stage, and refuse to. He could talk, but he had never witnessed what Dylan did on the night of November 3, 1975. There were 300 people sitting in rows. Dylan hadn't done a TV interview in 6 years. When he came onto the Tonight Show stage that night, he was carrying. That night, he appeared on stage with anything in his left hand. It wasn't a guitar. It wasn't a mouth organ. It was a picture. Carson saw it right away. Dylan sat down and put the picture face down on the desk and said 5 words that made Carson's hand stop halfway to his cup of coffee. Gonna show you something. In 8 minutes. That picture would display 20 million Americans, a face they had never seen before. A man they thought they knew. I often see what those who didn't say anything have to say. Find out they weren't signed up. If you like the channel, please take a second to check and make sure that you are signed up. It is free, and it genuinely helps us make the show bigger. Thanks. Thank you for being a part of this journey with us. We need to go to grasp this. 30 years ago, in the north of Minnesota. To Hibbing, a mining town. Winter. In Hibbing, it lasted for 9 months. The wind cut through the exposed mine pits and whistled down the town's only main road. In 1941, a kid was born here. City. Robert Allen was his name. Zimmerman. His dad, Abe Zimmerman, had a little appliance store on Howard Street. Abe opened the store at 7 o'clock opened it at 6 o'clock in the morning and closed it at 6 o'clock in the evening. In the evening. He didn't say more than 3 words very often. Sentences at dinner. He wasn't a hard man. He wasn't an awful dad either. He was a quiet guy. What you are about to hear is based on the facts of 2 genuine lives, their written sufferings, their known pasts, their private silences, and thinks on the conversation. That the proof of those lives is always seem to be pointing in that direction. The facts. The things people say about Bob Dylan are true. The facts. The things people say about Johnny Carson are true. What they said during their meeting exists in the area between what we know and what we can feel must have been. Yes. Robert was 10 years old when he came by the store one day. Abe was fixing a radio behind the counter. There was music on the radio. The voice of Hank Williams wafted through the dusty air of the store. Robert stood in the entryway and stayed still till the song was over. They didn't talk to each other at all. But there was a box on the edge of Robert's bed. It was inside. Harmonica, a maritime band Honer, key of C. No note, no wrapping paper. Abe never gave it as a gift and never waited to. Look at the look on Robert's face. He went to the shop. Robert took up the harmonica. And when he played his first note, incorrect, broken, nasty, anything started, 3 letters had been scratched off. Using a pocket knife into the metal. A.Z. The initials of Abe Zimmerman. Robert never told his dad about this. Abe never asked. But the story of that harmonica had barely just begun. As Robert got older, Hibbing got smaller. He started his at 15. Initial group of people. Abe came to the door to the garage, arms crossed over his chest. Robert thought his dad would say, "Turn that off." Abe listened for 30 seconds. After that, he turned and left. Inside. Not good, not bad, not keep going. Nothing. Robert did that night. A choice. He would leave this place one day. Town. He went to Minneapolis in 1959. He began to play in folk music clubs. He found Woody Guthrie, who was sick in bed. Huntington's disease is slowly killing him. Robert went to see him and play. Guthrie heard and exclaimed, "You've got it. Hey, youngster. Don't let it go." That. Robert Zimmerman passed away that night. Bob Dylan came into being. The name change was the quietest and most terrible statement the most hurtful thing a son could say to his father. Abe found out about it in a newspaper. He read that his kid had deleted his last name, the last name of his family, surname, in a short piece. He was at the store. He put the newspaper away by folding it. Put it in a drawer. He didn't say anything to his wife Beatrice. But after that night, the radio at a B's store never stopped playing. Again. When customers told Abe, he would shrug when I told him to turn the radio down. Habit. No one realized that every time when the station played Bob Dylan, Abe would get up, his finger off the frequency dial, and listen quietly from behind the counter, without uttering a word. But Dylan's genuine. The crisis hadn't started yet. The summer of the Newport Folk Festival took place in 1965. For years, Bob Dylan has been the voice of the conscience of our country. That night of July 25, when he stepped onto he wasn't clutching an acoustic guitar when he got on stage. Guitar. It was a guitar that ran on electricity. There was a rock band behind him. At first, the booing started as the connection broke. Pete Seeger supposedly looked for an axe backstage to sever the wires. People yelled, "Judy's." Dylan concluded his set and walked backstage into a dark nook. His hands were shaking on the wall, shaking in his pockets. A technician saw him. Years later, he said. That time, he didn't look hurt. It was worse than that. Nothing. After Newport, his fans were split. Hate letters came in on his 1966 trip. People booed him. During every event in Manchester when someone in the crowd yelled, "Judas," Dylan told his band to do one thing: make it louder. Then he got Bob Dylan and a motorbike accident. Gone. The most well-known for 8 years. Voice in America went virtually entirely quiet. In the meantime, Abe Zimmerman passed away in 1968, a heart attack. Near the back of his store. The radio was playing on the counter. Dylan came to the funeral and left without saying a word. In a quiet way. He walked after the funeral into the store. He got behind the counter. The radio was still on. Keep this in mind. It comes back. Later. Things changed in 1975. 2. Tonight, a few weeks before his tour started, Fred Dordova, the producer of the show, called Drew Wilson, Carson's assistant. Talked about that phone call years later. At first, Dylan's manager said no. They always said no, but Fred claimed it was. Carson asked for it personally. He had been, for 6 years, inviting him. Carson had advised Fred to give it one more shot. If it, I'll never ask again if you say no again. The answer was different. He will come. However, he has some rules. No questions. The tour. No queries regarding the getting a divorce. No queries regarding the kids. When I informed Carson he was. For a long time, it was quiet. Then he said, "That man is coming to talk." Fred. Let him say it. November 3rd. In 1975. 5 p.m. Dylan got to the NBC. Silently entered the studio. Linda, the makeup artist. Reynolds remembers that time. Dylan sat down, looked in the mirror, and said nothing. He had a picture in his hand. He kept staring at the mirror. Then back to the picture, and then back to the looked in the mirror like he was trying to figure out something in between the two. No one knew. But what was in that picture? But in 20 million people would be in 8 minutes. Find out. 11:30 p.m. The show tonight. The theme played. Carson gave his monologue. Jim Barrows, the cameraman, would talk about that night years later. There was something in Carson's eyes. He was telling jokes, but his thoughts was elsewhere. Somewhere else. During the ad, he slipped a note card out from under. Took the note off the desk, read it, and placed it back. I have never seen that card before. People came over and left. After that, Carson resorted to the camera. The next guest I have is someone I've been asking to come to this performance for 6 years. He always said no. Tonight he's here. Bob Dylan. People clapped. Dylan went onto the stage in black leather. Sunglasses, jacket. He sat in the guest. Put the picture on the chair and sat down. Desk. Face down. Dylan said, I need to show you something, Johnny, but first, I need to tell you a story. For the first. Bob Dylan started for the first time in his life telling a narrative on TV. Dylan. He didn't take off his sunglasses, but his. The voice changed. The nasal distant tone was no longer there. Instead, there was a dry, flat, a voice that sounded almost like a child's. I was raised in Hibbing, Minnesota, is a mining town. My dad owned a store that sold appliances. Carson said nothing. 40 years of experience had taught him this. The finest thing to do is. There is no question. My Johnny, your father was a quiet man. Not rude, just silent. 3 sentences at dinner. He did this when I was 10. Gave me a harmonica. Did not write a note on the box. I put it on the edge of I put it on the bed and went to the supermarket. Dylan took anything out of his pocket. Little metal. Worn. He put it next to the picture. This is what it says. Harmonica. The harmonica itself fell long ago, but I preserved the reed. It has been in my pocket for 3 decades. Barrows, the cameraman, witnessed via the lens that Dylan's hands were shaking. When I was 18, I left town. Changed my name, got rid of Zimmerman, and the name of my father, the name of my grandfather, and threw it away. Carson's pen ran out of ink. He had written something down on a note card. It wasn't finished. My dad. Johnny, I read about it in the press. He read in a news story that his son no longer had his last name. No longer had his last name. And you know. What did he do? Dylan stopped and gulped. Not a thing. He didn't call. He didn't scream. He didn't ask because that's who he was. He needed silence beyond anything else. His anger was quiet. His agony was quiet. The 300 people in the studio didn't get up. I switched to electric in 1965. Newport. Everyone in the world called me a betrayer. They yelled, Judas. Letters came. Many letters. You sold us out. I read all of them. Dylan put his head down. But the hurtful letter never came. I waited for a call from my dad. A call that said, forget about them, son. Or just. I heard something, anything. His voice broke for the first time. That call never came. Stay with me because what? The next part is the one that breaks. Everything is open. Carson bent over. He spoke in a low voice. Bob, the picture. On the desk. Dylan lifted his head. He took off his shades. For the first time. 20 million people watched The Tonight Show for the first time ever. People looked into Bob Dylan's eyes. They were red. I found this picture in a drawer. At my dad's store. After he passed away. 1968. He flipped the picture over. The camera zoomed in. A black end. A photo in black and white. A boy who was 10 years old, maybe 11, standing in front of a store, smiling with a harmonica in his hand. In back. Him, a sign that said Zimmerman's Electric. That's me in front of my dad's store. The day he got me the harmonica. Dylan said to flip it over. Carson flipped the picture over. On. There was shaky handwriting on the back. Letters that are small. Carson read it first. To himself in silence. His lips moved. He stopped after that. He took off his glasses. Carson only took off his. He took off his glasses when he had to rub his eyes. Johnny, read it out loud. Carson's voice was shaking. In 30 years of his, no one had ever heard that voice in their career. Robert is playing the harmonica. I saw. He smiled. I can't think of a better day than this. A.Z. Shut up. 11 seconds. 11 seconds on live TV is the kind of quiet that makes producers reach for the button to start the commercial. Fred Dordova was looking at the monitor in the control room. His hand was on the button. He wasn't able to press it. Dylan's shoulders were shaking. He wasn't. It didn't look like crying, but it did. There was a tremor. The unmanageable tremor that the camera caught. My. This is what your father wrote, Johnny. You already know this. Man, a man who never put together a sentence in his life. And one. He sat at his business one day and penned these sentences on the back of a picture. And he never let me see it. He put it there. Put it in a drawer, didn't lock it, and departed. Put it there like someone would someday. Look for it. Carson got up from behind the desk. In 4500. He has practically never done this in episodes. He walked over to Dylan, but he didn't give him a hug. Not yet. He sat on the brink of the chair and whispered softly, "Bob, my dad was also a quiet man." Dylan looked up. Homer Carson. He was the head of a small electricity company in Iowa. Left in the morning and came back in the night. When I launched the show, my mom called on the first night of 1962. She said, "Your father and I watched." Asking for my dad. "How was I, Dad?" I said, "You know what?" He said, "Dylan waited. It was okay." He uttered one thing. I did this show for 30 years and the longest sentence I ever got from my father was 2 words. It was okay. Carson's eyes were full. Just his jaw was tight. My dad passed away in 1983. I never once asked him, "Were you proud of me?" I was too scared to inquire. The answer would be, "It was fine." Ed McMahon was at the front of the stage, putting a cloth to his face. Dylan turned to Carson. 2 men, 1. The most mysterious musician in America. The America's most famous face, on the other hand, having the same injury. Sons of quiet fathers, men who went on stage to be heard, but had never heard the one voice they really wanted to hear. "Hey Johnny," Dylan said, his voice almost a whisper. "Your dad saw you do that. That night, he insisted it was all right. That was the way he said, 'I'm proud of you.' He just didn't know how to phrase it." Carson's. For 1 second, her lip shook. Then he calmed down, but the camera caught that 1 second in 20 million people saw it. But there was something else. That night, no one knew. After that, Carson walked Dylan after the show was over. Backstage by himself. He never did that. Most of the time, guests left on their own. They headed inside the green room. Carson was closed. The door. Dylan's manager was waiting outside. For half an hour. No one came out of that room. The management said that there was no sound coming from inside. No chatting, no crying, and no laughing. 30. A minute of silence. But the truth. The day Dylan found out that picture. When Abby's funeral was over. Dylan came into the store and the radio was still on. He got behind the counter. He opened the drawers. In the first, bills. In the second, fix tools. In the third, a box for shoes. There were dozens of newspaper clippings in the box. Of them lined up in order of when they happened. From 1962 to 1968. 6 years, every record review, every newspaper piece. Every concert that Bob Dylan is playing. Abe had cut them all out and folded them. Then put them in the box. And that was at the very bottom of the box. Photo. In front of the store with the harmonica, Abby's writing on the back. Dylan kept the box secret for 7 years. When he got to the Tonight show in 1975, he simply brought the picture since the picture was enough. Those two sentences are on the back. Robert is playing the harmonica. I saw. He smiled. I can't remember a day that was better than this, Abe's longest sentence. What Zimmerman said to his son. But he never told me one more thing. Carson. The day he found the box, at the very bottom, under the picture, there was a small piece of paper. On it, in Abe's calligraphy, a single sentence. I can hear my son's voice on the radio. I couldn't tell him. Dylan took that piece of paper with him. Wallet. He never displayed it for 40 years. To anyone, not even on The Tonight Show. This one was exclusively his. The heavy silence of a sentence that a parent couldn't say, and a son heard too late. When they cut to commercial, not one person among the 300 people in the studio stood up from their seat. Marcus Webb, a lighting technician, 31 years old, talked about that night years later. I was meant to turn down the lights on stage. Lights. I forgot. I was just standing there, looking at Dylan's face. Everyone was. After the show was over, NBC. The switchboard is stuck. Over 3,800 calls came in throughout the first 2 hours. A woman from Kansas called and said just this. I'm going to contact my dad. We haven't talked in 7 years. I'm going to call him tonight. A soldier of the Vietnam War wrote from Texas. I can't recall the last time I uttered to my son. Dylan was correct. Not answering is not a response. The newspapers went crazy in the morning. Scores gave the most people to watch The Tonight Show. 22.1 million people watched it this month. But there was more to it than just the numbers going on. Sons calling their dads. Dads calling their sons. The number. NBC got more than 14,000 letters. In 3 weeks. A dad from Michigan had written, I was also Abe. My boy turned into a musician. I never stated I was. I'm proud of you. I stated it tonight. Dylan didn't go to Hibbing that night. But he went a week later. Abe's store had been open for a long time. Been shut off. One of the town's old. Ray Gunderson, a resident. The proprietor of the store next door halted when he saw Dylan. Your dad used to talk. He said something about you. Dylan stopped. What? What did he say? Ree shrugged. Not much, but when your song came on the radio, he'd look up, listen for a second, and then he went back to work. Every time. Dylan stayed in town for every song. Night. He went to the grave of Abe. No one knows what he said. Bob Dylan never talked about that night again. When reporters inquired, he just shrugged. I showed a photo. People make a big deal out of it. But the people closest to him knew. Dylan brought that picture to every big stage. He was at the Grammy Awards, a performance, and an award show. In his jacket pocket every time, never showing to anyone. At the Grammys in 1997, while singing Knocking on Heaven's Door, he quickly moved his left hand to his pocket. The camera saw it, but no one else did. Understood what that meant. You do now. When? A handwritten card said that Johnny Carson died in 2005. Was discovered among his things. In Carson's handwriting on it. Quiet. Also, love from father. They just don't know how to say it. Dylan was correct. And that store in Hibbing Zimmerman's Electric was taken down. They erected a parking lot instead of it. But in the library in town. In the local history section, in a glass case, there is just one picture. A boy in front of a shop, holding a harmonica and smiling. No one can see the back of the picture, but everyone now knows what it says. Maybe there is a quiet father in your life, or a son who doesn't talk, or a sentence that needed to be uttered years ago, but it never happened. Abe Z. Put that sentence in a drawer. Dylan. 30 years later, they found it. Don't hide objects that are in drawers. Say them out loud. Say them today. If this story moved you, share and subscribe. Tell me when was the last time you said something? I'm proud of you, someone. And if you haven't done it yet, maybe tonight is the right time. The proper time. Because someone is currently waiting to learn exactly that from